Hi, everyone. Welcome to Unchained, your no-hype resource for all things crypto. I'm your host, Laura Shin. Thanks for joining this live stream. Before we get started, a quick reminder, nothing you hear on Unchained is investment advice. The show is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and my guests and I may hold the assets discussed on the show. For more disclosures, visit unchainedcrypto.com. Are you a builder who needs to add on-chain trading to your product? The Uniswap Trading API from Uniswap Labs offers plug-and-play access to some of the deepest liquidity in crypto, all with zero hacks. It's on-chain execution at an enterprise level. More liquidity, less complexity. Visit hub.uniswap.org to learn more. Mantle is pioneering blockchain for banking, a revolutionary new category at the intersection of TradFi and Web3. Follow Mantle_official to learn more. Hi, everyone. I'm here at the Ethereum Foundation's Dev Connect in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And I'm here with Marissa Posner, product on the account and chain abstraction team at the Ethereum Foundation, and Yoav Weiss, research on the account and chain abstraction team at the Ethereum Foundation. Welcome, Marissa and Yoav.
Thanks for having us.
So before we get into the details about your announcement, which is super exciting, which is about the Ethereum interop layer, why don't we have you just introduce yourself? So give your background and talk about how you came to work at Ethereum.
Yeah, I can start. So I studied computer science and economics and kind of was always interested in the intersection of AI and blockchain. So out of college, I was a machine learning engineer. And then I kind of just fell in love with crypto through a data side of things. I was really interested in understanding everything that was happening on chain. So I started building some analytics tools on top of on-chain data. Kind of from there, did a few other startups. And last year at DevCon, I heard about the role at the Ethereum Foundation. It's actually kind of a funny story. I was on a bus to see Moodang, the viral hippo, and I heard someone behind me saying that the EF account abstraction team was looking for someone super specific that fit my exact archetype. And I was like, wait, that's me and like 10 other people. And they introduced me. And from there, it was history.
And Yoav?
Yeah, so I started working on Ethereum, on Ethereum stuff on public infrastructure in 2017. And when I started using Ethereum, I thought the UX, the onboarding UX was terrible for me because, I needed to I just wanted to experiment. I didn't want to, I wanted to experiment with some smart contracts. And I wasn't looking to make some financial stuff. And yet, it took me like 2 months to onboard because I need to pass KYC and I just want a little bit to start experimenting. So I realized this is not going to work. We are never going mainstream with this. So my focus became immediately trying to solve this onboarding problem, but doing it in a trustless way. We're not adding not through intermediaries, not through centralized exchanges. And this led me to start working on what later became account abstraction. So at some point I joined the EF and started building that. So the focus is always improving UX and user onboarding, but without introducing intermediaries.
Okay, so let's now talk about your announcement today, the Ethereum interop layer. Explain what that is.
Right, you want to go or so? Yeah, so the Ethereum interop layer is a way to solve cross-chain, to cross L2 transactions. And also the focus here is we want to have seamless UX and without introducing new trust assumptions. And the reason is we are looking at the way we look at it, Ethereum scales through L2s. So L2s are part of the Ethereum ecosystem. And as such, you shouldn't have new trust assumptions when you move between them, because otherwise these trust assumptions are part of Ethereum. So we came up with this protocol that does not add the trust assumptions, and yet you have seamless. It's going to feel like one chain. You're able to transact on multiple chains as if it's a single chain, with the lowest latency possible, and without these intermediaries because you self-transact. You submit your own transactions on each of the chains. So that's EIL.
And explain a little bit also about what problem you're trying to solve with it.
Yeah, I think today in a world where we have an infinite number of chains, it's such a long tail, and the users are increasingly transacting across many different chains, we need to come around a set of standards, such as interoperability standards between chains, which is something that is kind of a precursor to EIL in our mind. And these interop standards are things that remove chain awareness. So I could send to an address instead of a 0x. So I could send to, let's say I'm Alice on arbitrum.eth, and I want to send to Bob at base.eth. I can purely just type in Bob at base.eth, and my wallet can resolve all of that and send directly to Bob. And this is just one such standard. There's other things like an on-chain config that basically gives one centralized place to look for on-chain information about a chain that lets the wallet be able to resolve this information without having to know the chain before. Because like, let's say I'm a user and I put in this random chain like XYZ, whatever, then my wallet doesn't know how to resolve it. But these types of standards let wallets kind of resolve this long tail of chain and do this discovery. And then pair that with EIL, which is basically now you have the discovery of chains, but now how do you transact across them? And that's the problem that EIL solves, is like when you have all of these chains, now you need a way to move assets across them. And we were looking at the interoperability space, and we were looking at the existing solutions out there, and we were just not impressed by the trust assumptions in many of them. And we felt that it was important and kind of our duty as builders on Ethereum to build a solution that does interoperability in a trustless way without requiring intermediaries, which is why we built EIL.
And just explain a little bit more what a trust assumption is, like give an example or...
Yeah, I think so. Trust assumptions, when I think of like trusting someone, that's a way that someone can either hurt you, rug you, or do something bad to you. So that means that they could take my funds, they could block my transaction, they could front run me so I get a worse deal. They can do all of like these different things. And so I think in a lot of times we don't realize how many trust assumptions there are in what we're doing online. For example, even with RPCs, there's trust assumptions because we're not verifying the data that comes from the RPC. This is why one of the standards that we're looking into is like client contracts, where you can verify the data that you get back from the RPC. So you don't have to trust them blindly, because when you trust someone blindly, you open yourself up to getting hurt from them. And so a lot of the things that we're thinking about is how can we reduce that attack vector space? And with interoperability, you're actively increasing that space just by nature of compounding different surfaces with each other. And so like we were thinking a lot about that and how to basically make the interop solution trustless.
And for the explanation of the problem that you're trying to solve with EIL, explain like what the experience is like now and why that's not optimal.
Yeah, so nowadays, when you have to, each roll-up feels like its own island. Inside each roll-up, it feels like Ethereum used to be, but with a cheaper block space and like more abundant block space. But once you need to transact across roll-ups, the experience is that you need to bridge ETH to the other chain so that you can pay for gas. You need to bridge your assets. So it's like you sign a transaction to bridge. You send it through a bridge, you wait, you hope that you'll get funds on the other side. And I assume, you know this experience, you wait and just hope. And then you get them, once you get the funds on the other side, you sign yet another transaction. So it's like there's a lot of friction, especially if you're using a hardware wallet. So all of this friction, it doesn't feel like using one chain. It feels like you are moving between them. Every rollup is an island, and the bridges between them are complex. And what we want to have, we want to have an experience of having one chain, but with abundant block space. So I want to sign one operation, regardless of how many chains are involved. And then I want to send it. So I want my wallet to show me exactly what I'm going to do on each chain, but only show it once, let me sign it, and then not have the friction of bridging or waiting and so that's a problem we're trying to solve.
Yeah, it sounds a lot more comfortable, or like it would give you confidence in transacting. So how did you guys come to work on the EIL? Like you both just talked about, how you came to work at Ethereum, but how did you end up working on this particular problem?
So, after we saw that L2s become increasingly important, a lot of the traffic has been moving to L2s. And we started seeing protocols emerging for solving interoperability between them. And the trust assumptions were not great. The UX was not great. So we figured that we should start working on this, on solving this. And I had this idea of something like the general idea of EIL is something that I've been thinking about for many years now because I'm a security researcher, and I found quite a few vulnerabilities in bridges. I reported various vulnerabilities over the years. So I know how risky bridges can be. And when I designed ERC 437, the account abstraction standard, one of the first ideas I had. So one of the first ideas that I had is that actually, since we abstract the gas payment, you should be able to transact on chains where you don't hold ETH, and you should be able to do it with one signature because you can abstract the validation and make it work on multiple chains. So this has been an idea around ERC 437 for several years now, and we realize that now that interoperability becomes more important, it's time to actually implement that. So that's how we came to it's a direct continuation of our account abstraction work.
Yeah, we're actually calling EIL account-based interop because we're moving all of the interoperability into the user's hand, into the account or the wallet level, instead of other types of interop out there like message passing, for example.
Okay. Yeah. So explain more about how it works exactly.
Yeah, so we are pushing the logic into the wallet. We want to make the wallet the wallet should be the user agent, as opposed to trusting a third party. Instead of having a server operate on your behalf, all the logic lives in your own wallet, and no matter how many chains you're going to transact on, you're going to generate your own transactions in your own wallet and send them directly, not through an intermediary. Now, of course, the complex part is who pays for the gas and how do you have your assets on another chain. So for that we used paymaster contracts. That's part of ERC 437, where it's a contract that can pay for your gas. And so we created a cross-chain paymaster, which gives you a way to move assets and to pay for gas across chains. And this works by, for this, you actually need someone to give you funds on the other side, but we didn't want this someone to be involved directly in your transaction. We didn't want to go through that someone. So instead, we have liquidity providers, but the liquidity providers provide you liquidity through an atomic swap by giving you on the source chain, when you want to transact, you send a request, and you don't expose your intention. You don't say, I'm going to mint this NFT on that chain. What you say is, I need 1 ETH on that chain. So I need 1 ETH on that chain to pay for something and for gas. And they give you a voucher. Now, this voucher is an atomic swap. So they claim your 1 ETH on the source chain by giving you this signed voucher. And then the same voucher, you can use it yourself with the paymaster at the destination. So it's atomic, like either they give it to you or they don't. And if they give it to you, then they already gave you the funds on the other side. So there's no risk that you don't have you end up without the funds. And this allows you to self-transact. So you buy a voucher for gas and for funds on another chain without exposing your intention, without exposing your IP address, because this is fully on-chain. There is no direct connection, like they don't know your IP address. You don't connect to some server. Instead, you send a request on-chain. You immediately get the response, which in a competitive landscape is going to happen in the same block because they're going to see it in the mempool. So someone is going to bundle your request with a voucher because they want to be the first one to claim the fee. And by claiming the fee, they give you the voucher that you're going to use like in the next block on the destination chain to submit your own transaction. So that's basically how EIL works.
I'd like to illustrate an example that I have kind of related to what Yoav was saying in kind of the difference between a lot of the existing models, which are a lot of solver-based models, and EIL. So I brought these envelopes with me. This one says user's intention. And inside the envelope, so I as the user would give this to the solver. The solver takes this envelope and they open it and they read what is in it. And I can see it says to swap 100 USDC to ETH on Arbitrum, send that ETH to my friend on Base, Bob at Base.eth. So I, as a solver, in order to move this from one chain to the other, I need to open the envelope. I need to see the full user intention of what is inside. Now, that means that I, as a solver, can front run the user. I can censor the user. I can decide not to pass this. And I know if they're going to do. So I have a lot of information about them, like IP address. So I can choose not to pass that. So this has a lot of trust assumptions in it. And so that was something that when we were designing EIL, we wanted to avoid. And so I'm now going to give the example of EIL. So EIL, I have an empty envelope. And I have an empty envelope because there's no message in it. What is passed to the voucher is I have a fee, like a stamp, of 0.02 cents of USDC. It could be USDC because it could be a non-native gas token. It doesn't have to be ETH because of 4337 paymasters. I have two base, I'm saying who it is sent to, and the amount, which is 100 USDC. And all that, so I don't know who my friend is. I don't need to know what I'm doing on that on the destination chain. All I need to know is the amount and who I'm sending it to. It's kind of like if you were gonna, if I was
the who on which chain. You don't expose who on this chain you're going to send it to.
Exactly. And so I now, as the liquidity provider, which in our case is kind of like the solver, except that I don't know anything about the user. I am only providing the liquidity. So if you were kind of thinking about this, let's say I'm going on a trip, right? I'm going from Buenos Aires to Patagonia. I could take a bus, right? And I could get on this bus. I buy my ticket. The driver knows where I'm going. He knows I'm getting off at Patagonia. He can decide to reroute. He could stop the bus. He can do all of these different things that would prevent me from getting to Patagonia. But let's say I'm driving my car and I go to a gas station. I need to fill up on gas. That gas station is like the liquidity provider in our example. And that gas station doesn't know where I'm going after. It doesn't know what I'm doing. All it knows is I need this amount of money, and it can choose to give me the gas or not. And it is completely atomic. And then I can go on my way and do the rest of my trip myself, and I don't need to rely on someone else. So that's kind of like one of the big advantages that we're thinking of with Ethereum interop layer, and kind of how it relates back to trustlessness and designing this whole system around it.
So it's so interesting hearing these descriptions, because also I'm sure you're aware that near intense has kind of taken off with the whole Zcash craze recently. So can you explain how this is similar or different from that?
So intents in general are a high level construct. It's a different level of abstraction where transactions are very prescriptive. You say exactly like, this is my call data, this is a contract address, I want to make exactly this call. Whereas with intents, you don't say how to do it, you just say what you want to achieve. Like, okay, I want to have 1 ETH on that chain, or I want to have this NFT. And then I let a solver figure it out. Now, the problem with this model, it's great, it's very flexible. And if we could have it trustlessly, it would really be awesome. But there is room for interpretation, right? You are not telling the solver how to do it, only what you want to achieve, which gives them a lot of leeway. And the more leeway you give a third party, the more they can also hurt you. So so you have to introduce some trust assumptions. So we chose to have EIL. So EIL is a transport layer that works at transaction level. When you use a DApp that needs to do something, it actually tells the wallet exactly, this is the call I want to make on this chain, and also make that call on that chain. But with an intent, it would just state what it wants achieved, and let this third party figure out how to do it. And this is really hard to decentralize. And having spent a few years on these problems, I can tell you that decentralizing something like intents, there are a lot of ways where the user can grief the solver. There are a lot of ways that the solver can censor the user. So making it having a mutual distrust between solvers and users is a really hard problem. And we chose to instead of having to deal with this problem that I'm not sure how easy it would be to solve, we just say let's use transactions, because dApps generally know what they want to execute. No, it is possible to build an intent framework on top of EIL by having like a local solving. So you could implement some of this logic locally, and instead of having this black box that you send the intent to, you can have this transparent box on your own computer that will apply some of this logic. But this requires a lot more research. So maybe we'll get there in the future.
Hey, founders and developers. If you're looking to bring on-chain trading to your product, wallet, or platform, check out the new Uniswap Trading API from Uniswap Labs. It's your plug-and-play gateway to global on-chain liquidity. No deep crypto expertise required, and no need to manage complex integrations or ongoing maintenance. With the Uniswap Trading API, you'll get enterprise-grade on-chain execution, combining both on-chain and off-chain sources for the most competitive prices. Simply put, more liquidity, less complexity. And this isn't just any API. It connects directly to the Uniswap protocol, which has securely processed over $3.3 trillion in total volume with zero hacks. So stop worrying about liquidity infrastructure and focus on building your product. Get access to the same liquidity that powers billions in swaps through one powerful API. Visit hub.uniswap.org to learn more. Mantle leads the establishment of blockchain for banking as the next frontier. UR is the access layer that transforms Mantle Network into a purpose-built vertical platform, the blockchain for banking, that enables financial services on-chain. UR unifies and vertically aligns Mantle's focus on payments, trading, and assets. MI4, METH protocol, functions FBTC, supported by developer grants, ecosystem incentives, and the industry-leading distribution platform through the UR app, Reward Station, and Bybit launch pool. All economic activity within UR will be captured by Mantle Network to further drive value to token holders and establish its significance in blockchain for banking. Follow Mantle_official to learn more. Okay, and then as you mentioned, so it's built on account abstraction, and that is something that enables smart contracts to initiate transactions in an externally owned account, which traditionally has been kind of manually operated by a human. So are there any security risks in this, setup?
So account abstraction, regardless of intro of account abstraction, it gives you a lot of new powerful tools, but also a lot of risk. Like, for example, now you have on-chain code that manages your assets. It's your account, but if there's a bug in your account, then of course there's risk. But it's not that it's riskier, it's different kinds of risk. Because, for example, with an EOA, you could lose your key, or someone could steal your key. So if you lose your key, you lose your asset. If someone steals your key, they have full control over your account. Now, with account abstraction, it can be more nuanced. You can apply access controls, like you can have spending limits. You can have different keys for different operations. You can have session keys that are temporary. So account abstraction improves your security in many ways, but you need the contract to be well audited. So of course, don't go put your asset in an account that you don't trust. You should check that it's been audited. But once you have that, the security advantages, in my opinion, far outweigh the risks. And at some point, we'll have to get there anyway because of things like quantum resistance. Because Ethereum enshrines ECDSA, but ECDSA is not quantum safe. So at some point, we're going to have to switch to other signature schemes. With account abstraction, you can implement any scheme. So this allows us to start migrating accounts to different schemes. So that's a bullet we'll have to bite in any case.
Okay. And so in order to implement this, is this something where each chain has to individually integrate it, or
no?
Okay.
So that's
explain how that works.
Okay, you want to answer?
Sure. Yeah. So EIL works out of the box on all EVM chains that settle to the L1. So no, a chain doesn't have to implement anything. Actually,
so it's sort of like I in the blog post, they talked about it being similar to HTTP. So can you explain? That's
a different analogy because but first, just to answer the question first, so EVM is it's any EVM chain can use it because it's just a smart contract. EIL is a set of smart contracts which you can just deploy. It's permissionless. Anyone can deploy it on any chain. You don't need the team that manages the chain to do it. Now,
currently it's deployed on testnet. So we're on Sepolia, Arbitrum Sepolia, Base Sepolia, and Optimism Sepolia.
Yeah, that's an important distinction to make. There's not we are nowhere near mainnet yet. It's a testnet. It's testnet grade right now, and we let people start experimenting and integrating. but it's not launched officially yet. Now, the HTTP analogy, that's something I like to use. Being old enough to have used the internet before the mid-90s, I know that, Ethereum feels a lot like the pre-HTTP internet. So before HTTP, we had the internet, and it wasn't very usable. I could telnet to a server and run commands. I could FTP to a server to download a file. Could IRC to yet another server and chat with my friends. We had all of these, but the friction of switching between them, each application was an island, which each server was an island, and all of these use cases required talking to a single server. So I have one server where I download files, but I don't have any usability like chatting with people there. And the friction of moving between them was actually closing one application on my computer, starting another one, authenticating myself to yet another server. And this is what Ethereum feels like when you move between L2s right now. Now, what changed it and made the internet what it is today is the web. This is HTTP. So with the HTTP protocol, you can have an application that spans across multiple servers. You can have load the HTML from one place, the images from another, JavaScript code from yet another, and even have things like managing your identity on another server, authenticating to one server to use an application on another, so you have your identity in one place. And you can have a secure payment server, so now e-commerce becomes possible. All of this composability made it possible for developers not to reinvent the wheel, and but to reuse existing services and build upon them. And what we're thinking is that EIL can do the same for Ethereum, because once you can easily compose with one operation that feels like making one transaction, you can actually use app chains and you can combine different app chains to achieve one result. Then it opens up all this design space, which is what HTTP did for the internet. So that's one.
So interesting. Yeah. But it's only for L2s, right? Because there's so many EVM chains that are layer ones, but it won't work for them, right?
Because that. So one trust. The assumption, in order to avoid the trusting an oracle, you need to have a single shared source of truth, and Ethereum has that. In Ethereum, we have L1, which acts as everyone settles to Ethereum. So ultimately, you have a way to settle any disputes. There is only one truth. Once you have alt L1s, now you need some intermediary to tell you the state of this L1 is that, and you have to trust that someone. There is no way to prove it on chain. You can vote on it, or you can. But we chose not to have these trust assumptions, but instead to use L1 for any resolution.
Okay. So what types of transactions do you think will use EIL, and what types of new behaviors will emerge from its implementation?
Yeah, I think we're really excited to see what people are going to build. There's so many different use cases. So today we came out, we demoed our demo app, Stitch, that lets you do cross-chain composable transactions using Ethereum interop layer. And some of those examples could be I could lend 100 USDC to Aave, and then I could bet yes on a specific prediction market in Limitless. And all of these are on-chain things. I can then batch them. I could batch 5 different actions into one. I could even let's say I want to swap 100 USDC to ETH and then stake it, for example. But I don't know how much ETH I'm going to get back, right? This value, because the rate might change. It's kind of a dynamic value, but then I'm staking that result. So I can chain all of these things together, and the primitives that you can build on, or what you can build on top of these primitives, is a really interesting concept. And I think we're excited to see that. I don't know that at the beginning of HTTP, if people could even conceptualize what the internet is today. And so I think we're really looking forward to what people are going to build.
And what are examples of transactions that it wouldn't make sense to use EIL for?
Yes, that's a great question. So for EIL is perfect for single user transactions. When you have a case of multi-party, when you need multiple people, such as CowSwap, for example, you need multiple users in the same transaction. EIL isn't the best fit for that, or is not a fit for that at all, because EIL is just a single user and there's no intermediary or AMM in the middle.
Yeah, I would say that any case where there is information asymmetry inherent to the use case, such as the example of CowSwap, where someone has an order book and you as a user do not have that the same level of information, this is where intents excel. So with intents, you can talk to someone who has more information than you, like knowing about the entire order book, and they can match you with the counterparties and get you the best deal. But as long as you know exactly what you want to do and you have all the information, you don't need to trust a remote server. There's no need to go to a cloud server and add this dependency. If you have all the information, just do it on your own computer. And I think just this morning we had this. I don't know if you noticed, but I mean, many things here were not working because Cloudflare had an outage. Now, the notion that you're unable to access your crypto because Cloudflare is down, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, that's not why we are building Ethereum. So for any use case where you can operate locally on your own computer without adding intermediary, I think you should.
Okay. So I did also want to ask, just when you talked about how this is going to be a wallet level capability, instead of like an app by app integration, what do you think that unlocks? Like, why is that significant?
Yeah, I guess just to clarify, so apps can integrate EIL as well, but when we call it wallet-based interop, because the interop itself, like what the moving of money is occurring within the user's wallet with the user itself. Wait, sorry, what was the rest of your question?
Oh, just like, why is that significant? I don't know if it will like unlock new behaviors or just make certain things possible that aren't possible now.
Yeah.
So I would say that if we go back to the HTTP analogy, the wallet is your browser. And what made the browser special is before that we had an application for each use case. But then with the browser, the browser is much more complex than these applications. It's basically an operating system. And this is the only thing you need as a user. I mean, how much work do you do outside your browser nowadays? Your browser is one app with infinite use cases. And it does everything you need. And I think the wallet can become the browser. We empower the wallet to not have dependencies on any third parties. And now the wallet itself can run any multi-chain operation, no matter how complex. And the way it works for dApps is so now the application doesn't need to know much about EIL. It just needs to tell the wallet, here are the calls I want to execute on Optimism, and then I want to execute these on Arbitrum, and I want to move the tokens that resulted from this call to that call on the other chain. And so the dApp only needs to communicate that, not knowing how it's going to work, and the wallet is going to figure it out for you. So so by empowering the wallet, you enable all of these applications, because now the application doesn't need to worry about plumbing. Currently, applications have a lot of plumbing work to do for interop.
Yeah.
Instead, just tell the wallet and let the wallet figure it out.
Yeah, this is part of the bigger vision, I would say, with the interop standards plus EIL, allowing for, I guess, the greater discoverability and letting the wallet power a lot of the things on chain. It also, one additional benefit is that it kind of reduces the attack vector. When you're not depending on so many different types of intermediaries, you've now reduced the scope. And now when you concentrate a lot in the wallet side of things, with the user, it's much easier to add, I guess, verification and to check things like I was talking about with light client contracts earlier, to verify the RPC calls, and to standardize things around the wallets. There's a lot of standardization work going on about that.
Okay. And so earlier you mentioned that right now you're on testnet. So what is the timeline for? Yeah.
Well, we don't want to commit to a timeline, but we are currently released all of the protocol docs to the public today. There's an ETH research post up that people can check out, and the code is also, I think, going live later. So we encourage people to build on EIL to test it out. We want to test out, there's a lot of crypto economic guarantees and mechanisms behind it. So we just want to make sure that those are solid before releasing to mainnet. So yes, I would say sometime in 2026 is when we will go to mainnet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But in the meantime, people can start experimenting. Since the code is out there and it's both on testnet, and we have this... We have a setup based on mainnet forks of various rollups, so you can actually try it out with existing protocols without risking funds. And we want to see what people start building and get feedback. And maybe this feedback will also make EIL better. Maybe we can learn from this feedback. So, for example, we're going to offer prizes at the ETH Global later this week, and we want to see what people build on this network, on these mainnet forks that are now live. So people can start building and telling us how it's going, and we learn from it, and this will take us closer to mainnet. Then we need to get an audit, of course, as security is important here, and then mainnet.
Yeah.
Okay. So once it's implemented, how do you think it will impact activity on Ethereum?
Oh, I think it's going to completely change activity, actually, because the moment that you remove the concept of what a chain is from what a chain is, what a bridge is, like what gas fees are, you've just made it so much easier to transact on chain, and you've removed so much friction. So by removing this friction, you've like opened the floodgates, I would say, to a whole new set of like use cases. Like I know there's been times where I've wanted to do things on chain. I'm like, oh, well, I have to bridge and then swap. And I'm like, okay, never mind. I'm like, I don't need to do that. But if I could just click with one button, like sign this transaction, and all of that would move at once, like I would have made many more transactions. So we're just hoping that other users agree with us and do the same in the future.
I think it also unlocks. Since before rollups, you were able to make transactions on Ethereum the same way because it was one chain, but you did not have enough block space, and we all remember paying insane gas fees. So not many use cases were possible because we were just outpriced. Any application that is not financial in nature was outpriced on Ethereum, and moved to maybe to alt chains. Now rollups made abundant block space, but on each rollup separately. So now you could not compose it. Now what we are doing here is it unlocks it by having abundant block space, but also being able to use it like a single chain. And that's the unlock we expect to see. I don't know what use cases we'll see, but I'm excited to find out.
Well, in my head, it sort of feels like this is going to supercharge DeFi because it's like the whole little money Legos thing that sort of temporarily became not fully possible. The composability now, if it works correctly, will actually come to fruition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's correct. But something that I have to, if I'm allowed to get a bit technical, there is one distinction to make here, that you'll be able to make seamless transactions that use multiple protocols, like swap in one place, then stake it in another chain. But you are not able to make synchronous calls from a contract on one chain to another. That's not possible due to L2 finality, which is not, you don't have this in sync. So it's not that contracts themselves can become composable. It's like having one protocol make direct calls to the contract on another. That doesn't become possible with EIL, and not with any other protocol right now. But what becomes possible is that you can combine them in a single user flow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and technically, I guess on the back end, just to clarify for anyone listening, that means that, well, I, as the end user, I am signing one transaction. In the back end, like what is happening is a transaction. Let's say I'm going from base to optimism. There's a transaction sent to base and a transaction sent to optimism. But I, as the user, do not see that nor feel that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking, so it'll be one user flow, but essentially what I'm thinking about is, do you remember, I guess this was like in the 2020 era when we would see these crazy hacks where they just combined so many transactions in one block. And I don't remember all the attacks, but some of them maybe like also did some economic manipulation. And anyway, point is, so this will not enable that type of behavior again, right? Because if each chain like still has to have its own finality for each step, then you can't just like string together a bunch of transactions in one block that enable somebody to steal a bunch of money. Is that?
So if I understand correctly, you do have the finality risk of each of these chains. So yeah, when you're interacting across multiple chains, and if one of these chains, for example, if one of these chains reorgs, and then like it undoes some part of your transaction, you are exposed to it. There's no way around it because you are, you have to trust the chains you use, and the operation is always as weak as the weakest link. So let's say you are using in the same operation you are using 3 different chains, and one of these chains is not as good as the other ones. It's and something bad happens there. So you should be aware. I should be aware, and let's say you don't want to, at the end of the operation, try not to leave your funds on that chain. So you don't have exposure after you move your funds out, you don't have exposure because now your funds are in at the destination. But if your destination, like if your funds land on a chain that where it's not safe, then EIL is not going to protect you. It is as weak as the weakest chain that you are using for this transaction.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what you meant, but that's the.
Okay. Yeah, I guess what I'm realizing is I do think though it will increase the attack surface area to some extent, or no?
No, I don't see how. It's we are not introducing new trust assumptions. Just if you're going to use this network, then using it with EIL does not increase your risk. It's you would be transacting. If you bridged your asset to this network, it is strictly worse because now you trust the bridge, you trust the bridge operator, and you trust the network. With EIL, we remove the bridge operator. You still trust the network you are going to execute the call on.
Right. But actually, what I'm talking about is more the composability of different smart contracts on different chains. Like if you're combining them in different ways. So I'm not talking about the bridge itself. You mean using things?
So since we are not actually adding composability between contracts, the composability happens at the wallet. So it's not let's say I'm swapping in Uniswap on one chain and then putting the resulting funds in Aave on another. So it's not that we added composability between Aave on one chain and Uniswap on the other. They don't trust each other and they could not affect each other. The user just created with this one flow, this single signature operation where initially did something on Uniswap, then took the resulting tokens and deposited it to Aave on the other chain. But now, if something bad happens on one of these chains, well, let's say one of these contracts get hacked, it does not affect the contract on the other. Because even if we wanted to, we could not introduce dependencies between these contracts. This composability happens at the wallet, and it only affects the operation for that current user at that current time.
Okay. Okay. Well, so as we just mentioned, so bridges are some of the least secure aspects of crypto infrastructure. So do you feel like now multi-chain transactions will just become inherently more secure? But then also, what does it mean for the bridges? Do you expect that they'll continue or?
I think canonical bridges definitely still have a place. We use canonical bridges. So I think it depends on what type of bridge. I think that, yes, there's a lot of trust assumptions in bridges these days, and we would hope that people would migrate towards safer ways of moving money across chain. And we hope that EIL enables that.
So, yeah, I would say that with bridges, so not all bridges are created equal. You have the canonical bridges that are as safe as the underlying chain because in rollups, the bridge is a part of the rollup. And then you have bridges, you have some bridges that have some proof mechanisms, and the worst kind is the kind where you don't have any and you just send funds to an operator. Now, the problem right now is that they are not held accountable. So users just pick the cheapest one. They pick the cheapest one, and it gets abstracted away. They don't even realize that it's riskier. And the way to fix that is with something like L2Bit. That also gives you it gives you the information. It says, if you're going to use this bridge, this is the risk you are taking. And just today, so Bartek from LTBit, we have the Trustless event, and Bartek just gave a talk where he presented this new framework they're working on, which will do, they're going to do for interop what they did for L2s. With L2s, you know that this L2 is so let's say this one is a stage 2 or stage 1, and this other L2 is stage 0 or worse. So now you get this red warning telling you, this actually you are using a chain that is not as safe. And we want the same for interop protocols. We want the same for bridges. If you are going to send funds for something insecure, maybe you're okay with it because it's just $10, but you should at least be aware, because if it's $100,000, maybe you should reconsider. So the user should be able to make an informed choice, and L2Bit is going to help with that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you feel we should mention in this pod?
I don't know if you want to talk about the Trust Manifesto at all.
Oh, yeah. Talk about that. You talked about how, or you wrote about how the manifesto was like infusing, or you're infusing the values of it into this implementation. So yeah, explain that.
Yeah, I think that we wrote the Trust Manifesto because we felt that it was, we were looking at all these like interop protocols, and we were just seeing all of these crazy trust assumptions, and we wrote the manifesto to kind of bring people back and remind people of Ethereum's values and kind of what Ethereum stands for. You know, I think that we wanted to lay out the groundwork with like rules for the road, like laws that people have to abide by, and like what builders should be doing in order to build trustless systems, and like how they should be letting their users know of those like trust assumptions. And I think, we kind of, the Trust Manifesto was a largely inspirational piece. I think like, at least in the past few days, I've been thinking a lot about like, okay, what is the action-oriented thing that we can give builders going forward? And that's not something that we've written yet. But I do think that like, I guess giving builders some more type of guide of how to concretely implement recommendations to improve trustlessness within their systems is something that like would be very helpful going forward.
All right. Well, it's been such a pleasure having you both on Unchained. Thanks so much.
Thanks for
Yeah. And thanks everyone for joining us live from Buenos Aires, or not live, actually. Sorry, pre-recorded. And thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
and the innovation driving the next financial system. Each week, I'll be joined by Luca Netz and Taylor Monahan as we talk tokenomics, DAOs, yield, security, and everything in between from people actually building in the space. One quick thing before we start, nothing you hear on Easy Money is financial advice. We're just three builders talking about what's happening on chain, and we want you to always do your own research before aping in. You can find all our disclosures at unchaincrypto.com/uneasymoney. All right. Hey, guys. How are we doing?
Hey.
Hanging in there.
I wonder if we're going to do that in the intro, which episode it is every time. This is episode 386.
At some point, we're just going to forget to update it, though.
Yeah.
We're going to have like fourth episodes.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk ICOs quickly. We've had a very interesting few weeks for ICOs. The ICO meta is back. I think we had the Mega ETH ICO, which we talked about last week. This week, Monahan and Aztec are doing ICOs on different platforms. So Mega ETH was on the Sonar platform. Monahan is on the new Coinbase platform, which you could be forgiven for being confused about because Coinbase also bought Sonar, but this is on a different platform that Coinbase built independently. It took me a couple of days to unpack that one myself. And then Aztec is running their own ICO, which is like a node sale or something like that. Let's dig into that. I think the Monahan ICO has been interesting because the price was, I think, maybe relatively high given market sentiment right now at 2.5 billion versus Mega ETH that was 1 billion. It's taken a little bit of time. It's still not fully sold out. What are our thoughts on this new ICO meta?
Super bullish on the ICO meta because I think this idea of not putting your money where your mouth is and expecting huge upside, I think is a fallacy that I think Web3 ran with that I think was not healthy. So I do like this idea of ICOs in general. I like the idea that Coinbase is doing it because you kind of have that, Legion and CoinList and others have been doing it for a while. But Coinbase doing it feels like you're safe and that you're not going to get like popped 4 years from now or 2 years from now for doing it. Feels like, dude, this publicly traded $100 billion company empowered me to do this. So I'm doing it now. And if I'm not allowed to do it, then what are you doing letting this huge $100 billion publicly traded company, enabling me to do it? So I like that.
Well, at least if Gensler V2 comes after someone, they'll come after Coinbase, right? They're probably not going to come after you personally. So it's a bit of cover fire, I guess.
Little bit of cover fire, and I like it because I think we might have spoken about this last week, but this just idea that getting huge, life-changing, generational returns in public markets just aren't there the same way they used to be. And one of the beauties about crypto has just been that ability to allow people to get in really early, which I think would be like my only reservation with the Monahan ICO is
right. Is the prices.
Yeah, it's like too high, man. You gotta do these prices where it's not just an easy double, right? Like it's an easy 4, 5, 6, 7x. I think we're kind of misconstruing the beauty of, I think, the ICO mechanic if it's done at those type of prices. But I do understand community alignment, and if it's going to fill, it's going to fill. It probably will end up filling. Probably didn't fill.
Well, there's an argument that like the way that the Coinbase fill from the bottom setup has been done, it kind of encourages people to wait, which people wait anyway. Like I think Mega ETH, I looked at it and there were like 20,000 people that had gone in, and then in the last like 24 hours, it was like another 30,000. It was like more people went in the last 24 hours than went in the first like 4 days or something. So I think people in crypto feel very high opportunity cost of having capital locked up, and so I actually maybe the Mega ETH money is still locked up. I don't know. Have they released that yet?
I don't think it's all I think they're on the precipice of release. It's like on the verge.
Okay.
It's right there.
I saw a couple of jokes that they might just hold it until the Monad sale is over, which feels very adversarial, but
Yeah, okay, do you guys understand? I don't understand. There was drama on the timeline. I think like the other launch pads or whatever were kind of like ragging on the Monahan sale for not selling out instantly.
yeah.
But then there was other people saying like, oh no, but it's fine. And this is like why, like the way that the mechanism was designed was not designed to like
The
FOMO everyone and
yeah.
sell out, and you're actually better waiting. Is that right?
I think that's right. I think, but you know, to Luca's point, the price is the price though, right? Like 2.5 billion is pretty high. Like, you know, go back to the EOS ICO, which is my favorite ICO of all time, right? That went on for a year and raised $4 billion. You know, there is a point where I think to, you know, as you said, Luca, like there isn't really the potential for, this is the equivalent of like an IPO that, you know, some like OpenAI IPOs at $1 trillion. And it's like, cool, okay, like thanks, I guess. Like hopefully it goes to 2 trillion, but like, you know, there isn't that kind of early stage sense of, you know, you're getting in at a cheap price, right? Where there's a lot of upside.
I do think it'd be great for listeners. Can you actually like explain the EOS ICO, like how that worked, how they were able to keep it going for a year? I think that's actually a really good story.
So back in the ICO era, right? EOS turned up and said, we're going to do an ICO. And people were really excited for this, right? Like this was a new network. This was like one of the first post Ethereum Alt-L1 kind of projects that people were really excited about before like BSC, before Solana, before a lot of these things. And they were going to take a different approach, be more centralized. Shockingly, that was the different approach. Have fewer validators. It was going to be proof of stake. And you know, there was this period through like 2018 where it was one of the hottest projects, right? And so the ICO meta was everyone does an ICO through 2016, 2017, 2018. So I think the ICO for them started in early 2018, but they did this mechanism. And, you know, it's funny, like ICOs back then, there was actually quite a bit of innovation in the way that the ICOs were designed, right? Their innovation was, how can we max extract? And so they did this ICO where every week there was an auction for EOS tokens. And so the auction would start, it would run for a week. People would place bids throughout the week, and then the auction would close, and then another week would start. And it ran for a year.
Which, it was insane.
It was insane.
Because
right?
Prior to this, the way that it worked was that you would have this up-and-coming project. They would start getting their name out there. People would start talking about them. They would start shilling themselves, and you know, you figure out whatever the hell they're doing. And then they would based on like, you know, a variety of factors, they would then sort of figure out how much they wanted to raise, and that was like the defining thing. And so it was like, oh, we're gonna do like a $5 million or a $15 million or $100 million or whatever it was, but there was always like a cap on it. And so like in mid 2017, it was like, you know, like Brave and like Status and all these like big ones, but the big ones were still like $100 million. And they would like sell out like
100 was like the max that people could pull off, right?
Yeah. And it would still sell out instantly, like, or nearly instantly. Like we're talking minutes to hours.
Minutes to hours. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then EOS comes along and is basically like, wait, why is anyone capping this?
Yeah. Oh, so I think there's two crazy outliers in this era, right? Gnosis is one. Maybe Polkadot you could throw in there, right? But Gnosis is one, and Gnosis is another outlier, not because they were trying to max extract, but because they kind of hit the peak of FOMO, and they created this reverse Dutch auction where the percentage of the supply, this is like classic Koppelman, like we're going to solve this problem through math and, you know, incentive design. Martin Koppelman's the founder of Gnosis, one of the founders. Stephen George is the other one. And so they designed this this system where instead of to your point, Tay, having to decide up front how much to sell at what price, they would have this reverse Dutch auction. And it basically sold out in like 2 minutes. They raised...
Yeah, because in theory, you're supposed to wait. The whole mechanism design is forcing people to wait. Because the
no
second that you... Yeah, and then and it was like one of the most peak like genius cryptographers meets crypto hype, because the cryptographers,
like degens and the cryptographers like just did not.
They were like, rationally, you have to wait, and then the degens were like, everything goes offline, all the money goes in instantly, and like the theoretical researchers are like,
they raised 400,000 ETH.
Yeah,
they raised 400,000 ETH, and they sold like single-digit percentage of the network or something like that, right? and then I think everyone was like, all right, we're never doing auctions again. That was a failure. But they still have like 300,000 ETH, so well played. So EOS goes, okay, what if instead of doing one ICO, we did 52 ICOs and made them a week long? And then they raised $4 billion. And I don't even know what the implied FDV was by the time it finished. Everyone was just over it. Like, it would like every few months, people would remember that this EOS ICO was still going on. And so the other thing that was really interesting about it is people were like, because we didn't have the technology back then to track anything happening on chain. And so people were like, they're just putting their own money back in because they could pull the money out every week. So every week the auction would finish and they could withdraw the money. And people were like, is this just them rebuying the same tokens like over and over and over? Because sometimes the price would go down for the auction and then it would get bid up at the last minute. Anyway, ICOs, crazy times.
Okay, but wait, hold on. Today it's better though, right? Like we're
way better. No, way better. Like it's definitely better. We've got better ICO technology. I think, you know, the thing that was really interesting to me about both Echo and Sonar is Kobe designed both of those systems with ICOs in mind, right? Obviously, he was there throughout all of ICOs, and he was like, I'm trying to build a system that is going to actually make it more accessible, right? Like I'm going to try and remove some of the perverse incentives in here, and yeah, I think that kind of worked.
Yeah. Well, and like Kobe, I mean, he really lived through it, so I am excited for the continued. I don't know. We do this thing where we like go all the way to the moon, and it's insane and bad, and then we like forget about it, and then we come back in a more stable, better, like actually solving problems.
Markets take time. So, Luca, I have a question for you. You did an airdrop launch of the Pengu token in 2024, early 24. Is that right?
End of 24. So December 16th.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. It feels like it's a lot longer than that. So if this ICO meta had returned, would you have considered doing an ICO instead of an airdrop?
No, because not for the story that it's trying to tell, right? Like the story of Pudgy Penguins is that it's the mascot and base crypto and the people's coin, right? So the people's coin is conceptualized through the form of generosity, right? And like giving and not taking. So this meta does, I think, make us look at other things that I think are a little bit different, right? Like we have Abstract, we have other companies in the Igloo, and so we're just looking around, right? Like obviously, I really like the mechanic of, airdropping the most loyal supporters, and then obviously having an ICO for the opportunists and the traders. I do like that balance. But Pengu specifically, just in its form factor, I also don't think it would have been as successful. I don't think where it's going to go. I think if you would have done it any other way, I think would have handicapped it from going to where I think its future ultimately lies.
Interesting.
But I do function because it's a community coin, right? It's a community. It's a proxy of community. I really believe that. But I do believe that in a world where the ICOs have come back like they've come back today, it's almost irresponsible from a founder perspective to not really take these things seriously, especially if you're more of a technically driven business driven, type of protocol driven, type of token versus I think we're in a very unique category,
right?
Where it
You're not trying to generate revenue and build some weird DeFi scheme or something like that.
Yeah, it's a proxy of impressions. And do you believe that we are the next iteration of Mickey Mouse? And do you believe in the meme and the culture that is the token versus nobody's underwriting Pengu because we're going to do $50 million a year in revenue this year, right? Like, you're not, if you did, I'd be like, you're kind of,
you're getting it wrong.
You know better than me. A lot of these guys are way dumber than everybody knows. There's some people who have underwritten it in such a way, but you underwrite.
But it wouldn't be 50 million; it'd be $50 billion in revenue a year, right? Like that's like the left curve take is like. So to close this ICO meta out, right? The other side of the spectrum, it was Aztec, or Aztec is about to do their ICO, I think, in a couple of weeks, and they started with an FDV of 350 million. Which, again, to go back to your point, Tay, like the ICOs, they would raise like Brave or whatever, they would raise like 50 million, 100 million, selling like 50 to 60 to 75% of the token supply, right? So these were like FDVs of like 50 million, 80 million. Like the Haven token, the FDV was like 60 million.
So I have a question, Kain. Were those fully unlocked the second that they came out?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I know. You would think like it was so wild. It was so wild.
Dude, that was why like people, okay, this is the thing, is like there was this tension between the true believers and the people who had been in Ethereum for a while, and then like sort of the newer, fresher faces, or just the people who were there more for the financial gains, right? The people that were true believers were like, it doesn't have a product, it's not gonna ever ship. They're like, there's nothing here. And then the other guys would be like, and then the true believers would be like, what?
They'd be like, you can't do this. You're ruining our network.
Why would you buy it? The answer obviously was because you could literally sell it at like minimum 2x instantly. Yeah. But oftentimes if it was a really if it sold out, you could sell it like 10x, 100x, within days or hours.
It would be hard. It would be hard. You would have to stay up until 2 a.m., especially.
You had to click.
Yeah, you had to click a lot. Things would go down. Like the website would go down. The chain would get congested. Like there were some where like gas price spiked.
Yeah, right? Gas prices would spike.
Can I run a theoretical by you guys? And I want you to, and I just want to underwrite it. Because I know you'd give me good advice as a friend and as somebody who's like aligned. But let's say I had something really special cooking, really special, and you take me at face value that. And I told you, and I said, Kain, I wanted to ICO it. I wanted to raise 50 million at 75 million FDV. And I wanted to give it all out. As somebody, me to be a high integrity guy who's here long term, I really just want to help shape the space for the better. Would you advise me, because outside of that mechanic being really exciting for like a week or two, right? Like, do you think like the long-term success of that, can something actually in terms succeed through a function, through a mechanism like that? Like, would you advise somebody like me to go and do it that way? Or you're like, nah, it's just really fun for 3 weeks, and if not, it's going to blow up in your face.
Look, it's a bit of both, right? And the reason why I asked you about airdrop, we talked last week about airdrop versus ICO, right? And there is absolutely a psychological difference. To your point, Tay, there were a lot of flippers, but there were a lot of people like, I guarantee you, if you go through the chain, there are a lot of people who bought the Gnosis token in 2017 and have never sold it. Like they swapped their ETH and they've just literally been like diamond handing it for that entire time, right?
I have like hundreds of these, by the way. Hundreds.
Yeah.
Literally hundreds of tokens. I'm like the all-time diamond hander.
And so
90% have gone to literally zero.
So it's like okay, you sell a token to people very cheaply, right? And it's, you know, you're talking 75 million FTV, 100 million FTV these days, and that was sort of the point I was making. Like, Aztec feels cheap at 350 million FTV, right? Like the times have changed. Like, there were ICOs that were doing like 20 mil FTV, 10 mil FTV. Like, they were, you know, it was just a different era. So selling tokens to something that people have any kind of long-term belief in very cheaply, there's two components to this. One, okay, how do you decide who gets those tokens? And this is one of the challenges, right? Like, there were a ton of ICOs in late 17 where it was like, and, you know, not an auction. It was just, you know, put a ticket in, and it was a lottery system who would get access. You know, there were a bunch of different ways that this could play out. But let's say that this was something in the Pudgy Penguins ecosystem, right? If it were me, I would say, if you hold a Pudgy, you get an allocation into this ICO, right? That was kind of the point I was making about Pengu, right? Is like, if you hold a Pudgy, rather than airdropping it to you, you're allowed to buy Pengu at, I don't know, 50 million FTV, right? The difference there is that you have bought a thing, and there's two components to it. One, you have a cost basis, so you believe, like, you had to choose to buy the thing. But the other thing is, you feel like you made a good investment that went up, and therefore you want to hold on to it, versus someone gave you free money that you now need to dump to realize. It's just a different, it's a different mindset.
Yeah, and it's different today because, yeah, there, like, I'm sure there were some amount of automated systems that were buying these ICOs, but the vast majority of the ICOs was actually like very, very manual, which is just insane to think about. Yeah. And every time I like recall this, I have to like go check myself, because I'm like, there's no way. But it was actually, yeah, there wasn't this MEV land. There wasn't this this understanding. Yeah. Like, it would take years for that, you know, like even early DeFi really like it had like manual back running and stuff, right? It took us years to get to that point where like, but if you were to do an ICO today in the same way that we were doing them back then, it would just be like, I mean, we saw this with NFTs a bit, right? Like, you just like the bots and the, like it's all automated.
Exactly. That's the hard thing now, is like figuring out like what would the mechanism be, right? So yeah, it's do you remember Civic? The Civic ICO?
Yeah.
So the Civic ICO was an interesting one, because it was like this 3-day period where you had to register and wait, and then the distribution of allocations was like capped, but then there was a weird bidding phase. That to me was like the peak of people trying to get into a very small door, and there were like hundreds of thousands of people that tried to get into that ICO, and like 5,000 people got an allocation. It was like today that you just couldn't get away with that.
Yeah, and going back to like a lot of the
ICOs, and then what did they do? They literally released like a vending machine.
Yeah, I think that's one that just died quickly. It was like, I don't. But yeah, it's like, also what's the point of the ICO? Do you want like fair distribution? Do you want to create the market? You want the price? You want founder exit? Do you want community? You want loyalty? Like, what exactly are you going for? For a lot of the early ICOs, it was like, it's kind of like a seed round. It was kind of like a PR community building thing.
But not like a seed round, but where you sold all of the tokens up front and never raised again, which was, you know, not the smartest tactical. Like, part of the reason I think so many of them went to zero, right, is like, you raised $10 million, and you think $10 million is a lot of money, and it definitely was back then, you know, but like 2 years later, especially because everyone raised an ETH, right? So this is the other ICO dynamic that people forget about, right? Every single ICO was denominated in ETH. We didn't have stable coins. We didn't have stable coins during the ICO meta.
Yeah, it was all ETH. Don't remind me, Kain. I have so many tokens that are zeros now. USDT don't tell me how much they were worth in ETH.
USDT was on the Omni network. It was on a different network. It wasn't $60 billion of USDT sitting on Ethereum mainnet, right? So ETH was the only medium of exchange we had. And so everyone raised an ETH, which was a huge ETH sink, which is why the price of ETH went up, which is why people could then raise more, et cetera, and then it all unwound. And here we are, still.
Yeah. So like if you raised in late 2017, when the price was like 500, the price of ETH was like 500 to 1,000.
Yeah.
A year later, ETH was what, down to 200?
80?
Well,
in December,
eventually it would go down to 80.
Yeah.
So you didn't raise $10 million anymore.
I mean,
you raised
Haven,
like 1 million.
We raised 30,000 ETH, right? So 30,000 ETH at $980, which was 30 million.
This was you. You were at the top.
This is me. I was there. That's me. That you're literally describing me. So we raised 30,000 ETH at $980. By the time we got to 2018, if we had done nothing, it's worth $3 million.
Yeah.
Imagine that. You're sitting there, you're like in a smoking crater, and you're like, what have I done with my life?
And also, like, you sold like all of your, like, everything.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy.
You sold it right when it filled. You basically just denominated it from ETH to dollars. You didn't hold it until 4,000 ETH.
No. So, well, I mean, like,
you have payroll and like
expenses. There were expenses, right? So my favorite part about this, right, is that obviously Synthetics is still here today, so we didn't run out of money. But it was I remember sitting there in 2019. It was like Feb 2019, and we were looking at our runway, and it was down to like months at that point, right? And Jordan, my co-founder, is like, okay, I've got a plan. Like, we can cut costs. Like, we're gonna, figure this out. We'll cut, the team down to like 5 or 6 core people, engineering or whatever. And I literally looked at him. I said, listen, we have 6 months to either make this work or it's dead anyway. Like, if we kind of try and extend that to 9 months, is not going to make a difference. We need to throw everything at this. And I said to him, I was like, I will plow this thing into the ground. And he was just like, I don't even know what to say.
No, but you want to know what, Kain? Okay, keep going.
Yeah, no, that's it. And so I did. And like at the last second, we pulled out of this death spiral and survived. Well,
there's a common denominator here, because I almost told my co-founder the same thing verbatim. And it was a little bit a different context, but we basically bought Pudgy, FTX blew up, we were going broke, we had to put another $1 million into the business. And he was doing this thing of like 2 years runway. Yeah. And I said, Lorenzo, by the time we survive 2 years in crypto, we would be irrelevant and this whole thing will be cooked. And so our strategy basically, even today, is like, I'm fully all in. This whole like 3-year runway thing in crypto, you don't survive 3 years if you're not staying relevant and keeping top of mind. I don't run 3-year run. I mean, now we've been able to capitalize the business well enough where we can run at that run rate. But I tell these guys, you got to put it all on the line, because if not, the community, the space will chew you up and spit you out. You don't have years to figure it out.
Yeah, you got 6 months. Exactly.
Yeah.
6 months.
So it's ironic you say that. It's pretty interesting, because I do think that's a really interesting factoid and common denominator that I haven't heard many other people say, but since you mentioned it, I think is so critical for at least our success. It was like, dude, we had to put it all on the line. And that's what kept us out shipping everyone. At a certain point, everyone was looking around in NFT land being like, dude, you're like the only guy shipping everyone. Exactly. Right? And it was because I was just putting it all on the line every time.
I still remember.
Because you cannot wait, and you can't I
because remember
if you survive 3 years, like that doesn't actually get you. Like, what are you going to do at the end of the 3 years? Like, that doesn't.
Survival in crypto is nothing, right? There's plenty of ICOs that survive 3 years, and no one's ever heard of them, right? Like they were just like pennies, and then eventually they died anyway, because you have to have attention in crypto. If you don't have attention, it's not going to work. I was just going to say, I remember that picture of you with all the Pudgy toys in Walmart. And I was like, this guy is like insane. How did this happen? Like, my mind was blown. Like, I saw that tweet and like my head exploded. I was like, how did he get an NFT into Walmart? Like, what is happening right now? So yeah, definitely worked.
And I shouldn't have done that, but I put it all on the line, right? I basically said, I was like, because theoretically, just one last point to this before we switch topics is like, I was way too small to be in Walmart at that capacity.
Yeah. This is before any goes anywhere.
Yeah. So the risk that I was taking, and we underwrote it as such, which is we either are not going to do this and miss our biggest swing at bat, or we're going to do this and risk blowing up our relationship and completely flopping in mass market retail because there's almost no way we can sell 1 million toys. Thankfully, we did. We've been in there for now 2.5 years, but had to put it all on the line. If not, I would have been cooked, and a lot of things probably wouldn't have happened the way they did. So put it all on the line.
Let's move on. Next topic. People leaving hype. There's been a bit of hype FUD around the white whale, who one of probably like 10 large anon traders, which is it's a really interesting dynamic with Hyperliquid because all of the trades are on chain. You have these people like James Wynn, the white whale. There's a few of them that trade. They're almost like celebrity traders, right? People can watch their trades, they know their accounts, they can see their P&L. And the white whale, post 1010, the huge liquidation crisis that happened now like 6 weeks ago, which it feels like yesterday, but there was this liquidation cascade that was triggered by Binance and a bunch of different kind of circumstances that obviously cascaded through all of the perp exchanges, but in particular Hyperliquid. There were a lot of people who were liquidated. There was an issue with auto deleveraging, where Hyperliquid was designed, and I think Jeff, the founder of Hyperliquid, came out and talked about this and said, we are designing Hyperliquid to be as resilient as possible, right? And this is an interesting question about trade-offs in a trading venue, right? Okay, you've got this tension between protecting the venue itself and protecting traders, right? And it's a little bit zero sum. The more you protect the venue, the harder it is potentially for traders. And so they made a decision. Hyperliquid made a decision to protect the venue, to protect the exchange at the expense of traders, and they said this is just very clearly the design structure that we've chosen for Hyperliquid. We think it'll make the exchange more resilient. We think it'll attract more liquidity, etc. But we have some of these celebrity traders who are saying we don't love this, and we're going to leave and go and trade elsewhere, find places that are more trader friendly. Let's call it. Which is again, there's been a few Hyperliquid incidents, I suppose, right? That come out and created a little bit of FUD, and but this is definitely the most recent and one of the bigger ones, I think. Traders leaving the exchange.
Yeah, I think his point. I think it's really interesting that he specifically is talking about like he has this emotional and like real connection to like real people who he's either directly talking to or like he's aware or like copy trading him, and like they all got wiped out.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the thing that's like kind of underlying this entire point is like when I read his post, at least, the thing that in like, it's not the biggest part of the post, but I think this is like his story and like why, like the shift in his mind. He goes, so this thing happened, 1010 happened, like the liquidations happen, everyone gets wrecked, et cetera, et cetera. He's like, but across the industry, everyone's doing victory laps. There's zero bad debt. The liquidations process flawlessly. The protocol didn't die, et cetera, et cetera. And I think he's sitting here like, wait, but like, there's like dead bodies everywhere.
Yeah,
What the hell?
Yeah, exactly.
And to me, like, I don't know, it resonates with me because I have lived that experience so often where what my personal observations and relationships and like the people are struggling is in direct conflict with what's happening, like what the ecosystem's narrative is. Yeah. Because as long as the protocol, as long as the tech was good, and operating logically and rationally and by the rules or whatever, like,
I mean,
we win.
Maker, this was, like there was a long period. So MakerDAO, OG protocol, Sky now, this is, leverage, right? Hyperliquid is a leverage trading venue. Maker was the leverage trading venue of the 2018, 2019 era. And it was all on chain. And so you could see all of the positions. And there used to be these graphs that people would post of, at ETH $600, there is going to be, however many hundreds of millions of dollars of liquidations. At 550, there's going to be, $1 billion of liquidations. At 350, et cetera. And you could look at this graph and see the progression. But to your point, Tay, like, that was us. Like, those were our positions that were about to be liquidated. And oftentimes people in the Maker ecosystem would come out and be like, yep, job done, liquidated all of those plebs,
Yes. Yeah. It was like look at it, ate through that liquidation wall like it was nothing. And I'm like, bro, that's someone's livelihood. What the hell is happening here?
I know. Yeah. So yeah, there is, I mean, it's kind of to that same point that you made about the ICOs, right? It's the like mechanism designer, mathematician meets degens. And it's like, wait, someone, was recursively levering up through Maker, borrowing and levering up on ETH and just got wrecked and probably lost millions of dollars, maybe lost all of their ETH, right? So
yeah, I think my interpretation of it was like, he loves Hyperliquid. We all love Hyperliquid. It's a great platform. But after 1010, he spoke to Jeff, and Jeff was not taking the same type of, didn't take the problem, right? The problem that, everyone can get, the systemic design of the exchange, which created or contributed to the problem. Obviously, I don't think Hyperliquid was the problem. I think we kind of know what the problem was at this point. But like, he wants to go and trade on venues where people want to address the systemic problem. Now, I might take the side of this where I actually might fundamentally agree. I mean, at what point, and Arthur from Deviance has had a lot of takes here, and I don't really know what's wrong with these takes. And I would actually love if maybe you guys could steel man the other side of it, because I know he got some pushback on this, but I don't fundamentally understand how you could get some pushback on this. I mean, what you're basically asking for is claiming that there's systemic flaws in the system, and somehow, some way we have to address it. And we don't need to go and innovate and prophesize on how to do it. There's protocols like Drift and others that are not completely calling your liquidation if something wicks for a couple minutes, right? There's some sort of, it doesn't feel like a circuit breaker, right? Like where the whole thing halts, but there is something in place. And to sit back and to see 1010 happen, and Kain, you would know, because I know, and you probably know more than me just because of how probably more well connected you are than I am. I mean, everyone got smoked. I mean, this is the first time in crypto that I have multiple people message me saying it's over for me, right? Can I have money? Can you loan me money? People asking me for loans. I mean, one of our biggest holders, I gave him money for all of his penguins. And he said, he was like, no matter, he's like, if penguins could go down 9%, I'm going to give you this money back whenever I get this money. And if it appreciates, I'll give you the appreciation for helping me out. I mean, in droves, they were coming to me. And it wasn't like that we deserved it. It wasn't like, we really fucked up this time, right? Like, it actually was a systemic breaking of the system, right? Like something internally broke, which, in one venue that broke things in other venues. And why does everyone have to suffer for what probably ended up being one or two or three people, making a mistake, clicking some buttons or doing some rounding errors on some math, right? Like, that should not cost retail tens of billions of dollars. I don't know. I mean,
the interesting point here, though, right, is like, let's look at price action today. So, Bitcoin wicked down to, whatever it was, like 104 on Binance or something like that. And we're at 89 today. And this is unfortunately fundamentally the problem. There were a bunch of people who were long Bitcoin at 20K, and that price was wrong. The market has corrected. The price of Bitcoin is now 90K, and you were, 20x levered up speculating that Bitcoin would go up, right? And so, like we sit back a month later, 6 weeks later, and the market was right. Those traders were wrong, and they would have been liquidated at some point anyway. Now, that's maybe a harsh take.
Let me steelman this because I can just speak to it anecdotally. I had my hyperliquid account. I got liquidated on everything. And the stops of my liquidation prices were 95% off of the spot price. Yeah. So I was like, I'm never going to get liquidated. And if it gets liquidated, I'm going to fill it, right? Or if it gets close to it, I'm going to, re-up the wallet and it's crossed. So I'm going to make sure I don't get liquidated. I got liquidated on things that would have never gotten liquidated in any efficient or correct market, right? 100%. So the Bitcoin analogy, okay, it didn't really get affected as much. But basically on anything that wasn't Bitcoin, Sol, Ethereum, or anything in the top 5 or top 6.
Yeah, I mean, Adam went to zero. Like we've never
literally
seen
zero.
Literally zero.
Yeah,
never happened.
Literally zero.
How is that?
Yeah,
right?
and it was all so fast.
Yeah.
Right, like the wicks were true wicks. It was down and then it was right back up. So even if it continued down over time, you still have to question, like, okay, but that
margin, and so like
again, how is that an exchange? If you're an exchange, how is that not your biggest priority to make sure that doesn't happen again? Like, what priority is bigger than that, Kain?
I agree. I think it's interesting. We've been reflecting on this at Synthetics now, right, for a while. OG Synthetics, the old protocol, it was a leverage. You had leveraged synthetic tokens, but without liquidations. And the reason why we had no liquidations is because we had this view that the market will almost be induced into liquidating people if you have liquidations, right? So there is this sense, especially on Hyperliquid, that if you can see that liquidating someone is going to be profitable and someone's stop is close, you can get hunted, right? Now there's arguments, well, no, because there's an oracle and it uses external prices, etc. But there is something to be said for very efficient, aggressive liquidations induce more liquidations, because people make money from liquidation. I mean, go back to the Maker example, back like the Maker Oracle debacle that happened in, I want to say 2019 or something like this. I'm forgetting my lore a little bit, but there were people who were effectively running those liquidations, running liquidation bots that made like tens of thousands of ETH on this day when there was a liquidation cascade that happened on Maker, the price dislocated, etc. Same thing, right? Like someone's on the other side of this making money. And so, you have to make a decision between whether or not you want your venue to be perfectly efficient, or whether you're willing to take some risk to tamp down the volatility a little bit when it comes to liquidations. And it seems like Hyperliquid is saying, like, too bad, so sad. We're not doing that. And so, there's definitely room for other people to come in and say, well, what if we had liquidation insurance? What if we had WIC insurance? What if we had some things that, and there's a cost to these things, of course, right? But if you knew, okay, if Atom goes to zero for a 1 minute candle, I'm not going to get liquidated because that wasn't the real price. Like, this is what it comes down to. I think, Luca, to sort of maybe distill your point, the price was wrong, and that's not fair that you got liquidated at the wrong price. Like, that's ultimately what it comes down to, right? I got liquidated at 5 cents, and that's not the price. Like, if you look, it's one thing to say Bitcoin, okay, Bitcoin, 104 or 90, like, what is the real price? But like some of these alts, the price was wrong, and I got liquidated at the wrong price, and that just doesn't feel fair. And, everyone's willing to kind of take, I think everyone's willing to take the risk when they're in a leveraged trading venue, but like the rules should be fair, and if the price is wrong, then we've got a problem, right? And I think that's ultimately what everyone feels right now is like the prices were wrong. I got liquidated at the wrong price. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah, and I think also I think probably from Jeff's perspective and the team's perspective, they are probably more focused on the protocol and the design and the credibility and the trustworthiness and like all these more technical things, because there's a lot of people betting that it won't, like they'll just end up with like a massive amount of bad debt and fail, right? Like that's what people are, right? So in their view,
can you steel man Jeff's point, Kain? I'm sorry. What is their take? Like actually,
okay. So here's
no, I don't. Well, hold on. I don't think that Jeff is saying, or Hyperliquid, I don't think that they're saying like users should be just like liquidated en masse at the wrong price. I think that they just don't have that on their radar as much as they have everything else on their radar, because since the day that they started building, it's been like Hyperliquid is going to fail for X, Y, Z reasons. And those failures are all protocol failures. They're all technical failures. They're all market failures in that sense.
Oracle failures, like, funding rate fail, like all of these design flaws that people have been pointing out. And so their view, I think, is that we could not have scaled this venue if we didn't make the design choices we did, which are aggressively skewed towards protecting the protocol over its users.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's hard to run that counterfactual, right? But like it has worked. So you kind of have to go, okay, fine. But this is the problem with crypto. Things work until they don't. If you start ripping the faces off your users and they all feel, aggrieved and that they were treated unfairly, they might leave. And if your users leave, then you don't have an exchange. And so there is a very, there's a tension here. I do understand Jeff's point, because what you want to avoid if you're running a venue is it would be far worse for them. And I don't think there's a perfect trade-off, right? But he is saying if there's a 5% chance that the exchange blows up, right? And, HLP gets bankrupted and, the entire venue collapses, or a 5% chance that a bunch of my best customers have their brains blown out. He's like, yeah, sorry about your brains. Like that's the choice that's being made here, right? Like,
I appreciate that clarity, Tay. And that's good.
Well, and I think this is what is going to be really interesting, right? Is like, okay, so now 1010 has happened. A bunch of people like lost big time. Moving forward, there is some amount of competition in this space, right? Hyperliquid, they sprinted and blew this market open, right? And so now you have all these other, upstarts that are appearing. Some of those are going to be good enough on the technicals, and some of those are not going to be good enough, but they're going to be innovative. And probably at least one of them is going to do both, right? Where they actually are, structurally sound enough, but also have something that differentiates them. Now, if that differentiating factor around, say, like users and liquidations and those sorts of things, if that's good enough, they will then eventually beat Hyperliquid, right? Hyperliquid will just hemorrhage users to them. At some point, then Hyperliquid likely, depending on the exact mechanism or whatever, likely, starts to prioritize that to keep their users. Well, and that's why, like, in my opinion, like up until this point, Hyperliquid does, even today, I have a hard time saying that Hyperliquid has like a competitor in the same sense. Like, sure, you have Binance and that's like their competitor, but there's no reason for them to drop everything and pivot to users right now from like a economic logical perspective. In my view, they should, right? Because it's the right thing to do, because they can solve this problem. There's a lot of ways that they can go about it, and they're in a good position to do so. But I do understand why they might not.
But I think one thing we've seen, right, in the space, and we saw this in DeFi, is someone comes up with a design that they think is sound, right, and they've optimized for all of the right things, and Maker even, right, like leveraged ETH, borrowing against leveraged ETH, etc. And then someone else turns up, forks it, and goes, "What if we just tweak these parameters a little bit and make it much better?" And 20 minutes later, it's smoking crazy. And so there will be an exchange, I promise you, that turns up and says, we are so much better for our users for these crazy reasons, and we haven't really thought it through. And, I saw one where they're like, we don't have liquidations. I read the kind of excerpt of and I was like, this is insane. This is going to blow up. This exchange will last for
Wait, so what? They just like haircut everyone? Like, what is the mechanism?
They charge higher funding rates. Like it's, and I had someone say it to me, they're like, oh, these guys have no liquidations. And I'm like, you can't just have no liquidations.
Yeah, I mean, that's the
knee-jerk
L2s.
reaction. Yeah.
Yeah,
like,
the L2s
liquidation
and the
bad.
chains.
We'll just remove them.
Like, whenever people are like, Drift has the whole, I don't know. Do you know, Kain, what's Drift's mechanism?
No, I don't know enough to speak.
It's basically like a slow TWAP out if you hit your liquidation price over like a fixed period of time. So you're not like completely obliterated. If for some reason you get wicked down, you maybe lose a little bit of your position.
And this, yeah, like I think the Oracle, ultimately, unfortunately, like everything in DeFi, it all comes back to oracles. And so the Oracle design becomes really, really critical around like where do the Oracle prices come from? And again, Maker and Compound and Aave, like all of the Oracle design, your Chainlink, Pyth, etc. Like this has all been Oracle design of like, how do we know what the price is? And if you tweak the way the Oracle price moves, then you get different results. So, but that's a very different story to say we have liquidations. We just have a slightly different design. An exchange showing up and saying we have no, because the problem is you say we have no liquidations and everyone goes, oh, amazing. Let me go and trade over there. And then it's like, oh, actually there are downstream consequences of not having liquidations when everyone loses all their money.
Okay, hold on. I found the drift. Okay. This is actually interesting. Okay, so they trigger liquidations based on Oracle price, not mark price. That's number one. Number two, they block liquidations based on 50% divergence between Oracle and the Oracle 5-minute TWAP. And then three is they perform partial liquidations over an extended period of time, for example, 10 seconds. And then obviously they have insurance and stuff to cover any losses from like bad debt, et cetera, et cetera. So it seems like maybe they've just prioritized how the liquidations happen by taking the edge off, basically.
Yeah,
right?
it's just soft liquidations. But the challenge here, right? The trade-off is, Jeff and the Hyperliquid team are not idiots, right? Like they have sharp liquidations because they are worried about blow-up risk, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so, you look at a system like that where the liquidations are soft and you go, okay, what are the trade-offs? What happens if we have soft liquidations? Well, there's a couple things that can happen. A huge price dislocation that's real, like Bitcoin decides that it's worth 40K now while we're on this call, right? And soft liquidations, the exchange blows up. Yeah. That's just what happens. If you have soft liquidations and the price goes down to 40K in the space of a 5-minute candle, and you were slowly liquidating people based on a TWAP and you had some kind of circuit breaker or whatever, unfortunately, circuit breakers only work if you control all of the trading in a single venue. Like the NASDAQ can say, hey, sorry, guys, we're not allowing Tesla to trade for 15 minutes so you guys can cool off a little bit. But if there are 50 different places where Tesla is trading and 49 of them are like Tesla's worth $2 and one of them's like, no, bro, like that's the wrong price. Like stop trading for a minute so you guys can figure out what the real price is. The 50th one is going to have a bad time when it switches back on. And people are going to be mad. So, all right, let's move on though, because I'm sure we'll be talking about Hyperliquid and Perps DEXs every week for a while. Multicoin decided to go long ENA, and this is a bit of a first of all, I'm a big ENA bull, so I'll just say that at the outset. The reason why this story was kind of surprising to me, Kyle came out and said, hey, we've been buying ENA for the last some period of time, right? So first of all, they've been buying ENA while the price has been going down. And I always love when Multicoin loses money. So that's even though I've also been losing money, I couldn't help but be like, oh, okay, that I like that.
What's the beef with Multicoin?
So maybe I'll get to the second part. The other reason why the story was interesting to me is Multicoin in 2018. So they turned up to DeFi And they were like, okay, they were big ETH bulls, and then they switched off. They became not ETH bulls. They went and did Solana and EOS and a bunch of other things, right? And they turned up in like late 2018, and they were like, okay, DeFi, cool. It seems like you guys have survived. Congratulations. Like, you've got 10 real projects here. Instead of saying, why don't we turn up and invest in all those projects and like help to support them or whatever, they literally were like, who is building the exact same thing that we can fund to attack all of these projects? And we were just like, what the hell is wrong with you guys? Like that, like it was just, and so it's quite funny to me that Multicoin chose to invest in ENA over trying to fund ENA killer, because that was their MO for a really long time. So I don't know if they've like lost their minds or pivoted or whatever, but as a VC funding the blank, like as a VC funding a Pengu killer, and I'm sure there's a few out there or whatever that are like, oh, we're gonna be better than Pudgy Penguins and Pengu for reasons, right? It's just positive EV. If 10 people turn up and say, we're building the next Pudgy Penguins, we're going to do all of this stuff, we're going to be in Walmart too. I'm also, a tall guy who's young and dynamic, and like, they literally like they'll roll them out, right? And there's like 10 of these dudes that are like all like, like they've got like the plush toys and everything. And Multicoin's like, yeah, we'll fund every one of you guys. Let's go. And they will invest at like a 20 mil val, and they're like, we only need one of these things to pay off. Meanwhile, you're like, bro, I've been grinding for 4 years here. Like, why don't you give me some money to actually scale this thing that's already working? Like, why are you funding these guys to come in and pretend to be me and fork me and take me down and whatever? So that's why it was interesting that Multicoin said, actually, you know what? Fine, we'll invest in something that already exists on market.
Well, I definitely empathize with your energy given that context. Obviously, like I'm I support the Multicoin guys just because they've supported us in the past, but that's good context. And anecdotally, I feel that because I've been very upset in the past, just personally having guys that do really support us who haven't done exactly that, right?
Yeah.
Trying to make a place better.
Yeah, like someone's like, we've got even bigger plush toys, and our founder's 6'8". Like, what do you think about that, huh? And it's like, wait, what? Like, because it's just in crypto.
They'll fund deals that are not even that compelling is the crazier part. That sounds pretty compelling, but they'll fund deals that are like a fraction as compelling as that. I mean, if that was the case, maybe I'll let them. But some of these guys are doing way worse.
Yeah, fair. So anyway, so I think well done, Multicoin. I have to give credit where credit's due. Buying liquid tokens on market of something. I think maybe we should just explain what ENA is quickly for the audience. So Athena is a project that actually came out of this is interesting lore. So Arthur Hayes wrote an article in 2023 and was like, what we need is a tokenized basis trade. So without going into too much detail, effectively tokenizing basis trade just says when funding rates on perp exchanges. So Arthur Hayes is the founder of BitMEX, and so obviously he thinks about funding rates a lot. And he was like, if we tokenize the Bitcoin basis trade, you could get yield from people who were effectively paying to go long Bitcoin. So all of these degens that are long Bitcoin, 10x, 20x, 50x, 100x long Bitcoin are paying for that, and we could tokenize it and get yield from a stable coin. Now, that was both genius and retarded because you can't tokenize the basis trade for Bitcoin very easily. And we have this network called Ethereum where like it was such an obvious play. And so Guy from Athena is like, okay, except for the Bitcoin weird, voodoo magic stuff where you're going to like build some technology there, we can just do this on Ethereum. And so he built Athena and it became this huge project. I think they're like $6 or $10 billion in stable coins. Like it's an incredible growth in the stablecoin TVL. And obviously, because it's crypto, a bunch of people were like, oh, we can tokenize the basis trade better than you. And, came out trying to build these yield bearing stable coins. But Multicoin's doubled down on the leader, which feels pretty good.
Yeah, I like it. I like whenever somebody.
What's your history with Multicoin? Multicoin supported you? What's?
I think they've been friendly. I've been, when I first did Pengu, that whole Solana ecosystem really rallied behind me.
Of course.
And so Kyle was, I don't know if they ended up buying, but he was supportive and he wanted to invest in early. And, I told him that it's not this really what it was, but, anybody that I think pick up the, because building an Ethereum land for so long, like no one picked up the phone. So when I hopped in Solana land, right, and I started, and then like literally the top 10 figureheads of Solana all got on the phone with me and gave me advice. I respected it and I appreciated it, to say the least.
You're saying
no, but I mean that's by the way, as controversial.
Yeah.
I will say this: Kyle is. Like, I will rage against him. You can go search Twitter. There's like years of beef, but I have like endless respect because like when he goes in on someone and he goes in on a lot of people, he is actually like a viciously great supporter. 100%. And so like if he's on your team, like, and I have respect for that. Like he's not going to back down. So as much beef as we have on the edges, like fundamentally, like, I don't know. I can't like deeply hate him or anything.
Yeah, same energy. It's funny. I sat there with him at Ethereum conference in 2018, and he was literally the only guy bidding ETH then. Yeah. He had a bunch of cash and he was bidding ETH, and I was like, wow, actually, so I have a weird love-hate relationship with Kyle. Like he does some stuff where I'm like, this guy's amazing, and then he does stuff where I'm just like, what are you doing?
How does Athena blow up? Right, like what is the black swan? I mean, you'd think 1010 would have really pushed the boundaries on that. I actually put a lot of size. Because of Luna PTSD, but actually, like earlier this month, I put a lot of money in Athena for the first time because I was like, if they were going to blow up, they were going to blow up on 1010. What is the black swan scenario for Kain, just so I can underwrite my risk?
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing is it was actually the USDE depeg that a lot of people kind of point to as one of the factors on Binance where, again, the Oracle price versus what the actual price was, et cetera. And it always comes down to Oracles. The black swan risk, I think, that people talk about is that it will be hard for Athena in a volatile environment to unwind all of the positions that they have that are backing the stablecoin, right? So they're delta neutral, which means they're not exposed directionally to the price movement of ETH, but they do have these constructed positions where they're long ETH and short ETH, and that's how they get neutral. It's not like they're just sitting in dollars in a vault somewhere, right? That's where the yield comes from, though. The difference in cost of holding ETH versus shorting ETH is where the money comes from, and so they need to unwind those positions. So even though in theory all the money's there, right? I think 1010 was interesting because it exposed something that I would have said people were underappreciating in terms of risk. Like what happens if there is some huge ADL event, right? And again, auto deleveraging is basically, we don't have enough money to pay the winners on the exchange. So, you had a winning position and instead of getting 100% of your win, you're only going to get 80% of your win. Now, the risk for Athena there is they have a position that if they don't get paid 100% of it, all of a sudden the stablecoin is not backed, right? They have to get paid 100% of it. And so this is another place where some FUD came out where I think there were rumors, I don't know if it was actually confirmed, that Athena had a deal because they're not leveraged. They're 1x leverage. So this is a position that they have that is not on margin or whatever. They're not borrowing. So they have a deal where they can't be auto deleveraged is the rumor. I don't know if it was confirmed, which means they didn't lose money. But in theory, if something really, really bad happened, they could be in a position where their their delta neutral position suddenly becomes directional. And this is what happened to a lot of the market makers, and why they lost money, and why you're seeing market makers complaining about 1010 so much even today, or liquid funds. Like anyone who's still griping on the timeline about 1010 lost a lot of money is basically the theory, right? And so I don't know what they expect to come out of the griping. I think they're just griping on the timeline. But if you had a position where, let's say, you were long Bitcoin on Binance and short Bitcoin on Bybit, 1010 was a bad day for you, because in theory you were, farming the funding rate, or you're trying to, some arbitrage play or whatever. But one of those venues kind of blew you up. And so your position ended up being directional, which is not what you want if you're a delta new. If you're trying to hedge the price exposure, and all of a sudden you're exposed to price exposure, and all of a sudden the prices are moving wildly, it's going to be a bad day for you.
Yeah, and I think Athena generally, like super generally, the black swan is like a combination of like I think it's predicated, like you have the bear market. And so the funding rates are negative or whatever for any amount of time. And then you have something happen where you have a gap that's created, or obviously like there's counterparty risk theoretically, although they've mitigated a huge amount of that, like it's still a thing. So then you have like, this triggering event, let's call it. That's, something blows up somewhere. And then due to probably like the more long-term market conditions, as people are trying to pull out, as they're trying to unwind the positions, as they're trying to get, back into sane territory, one, it just takes a minute and they can't. And two, the direction of the market is like further impacting them, right? Because like when you're unwinding positions, the money is moving around, which means that you're going to have an impact on the market, and if you're in that position where your own actions, right? This is like Terra, right? They're like, unwind as fast as we can. But every time you unwind, you're making the situation worse. Yeah. Right. And so I think that's generally, I guess, like the biggest fear. They've taken a lot of steps. I think they've taken a lot of steps to try to mitigate this. Like they have. They
have. I mean, it's the same thing as like Lido, right? Wrapped staked ETH. Wrapped staked ETH is a tokenized version of ETH that gets yield from being staked in proof of stake, right? The problem is, to unwind a staked ETH position, there's a cooldown period. So you're going to be sitting in the withdrawal queue, and sometimes the withdrawal queue to get out of staking is short. Sometimes it's long. You can imagine it might get much longer if all of a sudden people really needed that ETH that was in the staking pools because they had a position long Bitcoin that was getting wrecked that they're trying to like cover the margin for, right? And so in a market that's dislocating, you can get these weird duration risks. Basically, like, I need my money 10 seconds ago, and you're telling me it's going to be 30 days. And in that 30 days, bad things will happen. And so then at that point, I'm like, I don't care about your 30 days. I'm willing to sell at a 20%, 30%, 50%, 99% discount because I need every single penny that I can get to go and defend a position over here. And so anytime there's any duration risk where it's like, hey, Luca, I'm going to give you, $1 million for a month. And then 20 minutes later, I'm like, actually, I need it. And you're like, sorry, bro. Like, you said I could have it for a month. And I'm like, no. Like, how much can you give me? And you're like, 0. And I'm like, dead. Like that's duration risk. And I'm like begging you. I'm like, just give me $5. And you're like, sorry, I can't do it.
Yeah.
So.
Or you're like, I'll give you $1 in 3
I'll give you
days.
$1. And I'm like, can you make it $2, please? So I think we're going a little bit over. So maybe we should wrap it up here. If you guys are cool with that. We've got some more topics. We'll have to roll them over to next week.
Yeah.
I gotta
Yeah.
I'm 8 minutes late, so I gotta go.
All right, let's do this. So that's it for this episode of Uneasy Money. Thanks for tuning in. If you like the episode, follow us on the Unchained feed on X, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.